The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.
It's a gorgeous day here at the Alliance Girls High School. Welcome to the Kiambu edition of the Great Debaters Contest. We continue our focus on the Sustainable Development Goals. I am your host, Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Yumbok. The motion today is poor disaster management and preparedness policies are to blame for the recent droughts that have plagued Kenya. Mariam, we have Alliance Girls High School going against Nova Academies. Mariam, do you think they can actually make it?
I think they can, Austin, but we'll let them have the stage and prove themselves. Proposal number 1, you have 3 minutes.
Failing to plan is planning to fail. Abraham Lincoln once said that if I was given 4 hours to chop down a tree, I would use the first 3 to sharpen my axe and the last hour to chop down the tree. Disaster management and preparedness policies is the organization and management of resources and responsibilities that tackle preparedness and response in order to lessen the impact. In front of you is Nigel Mutuku from Nova Pioneer, ready to propose the motion that states poor disaster management and preparedness policies are to blame for the recent droughts that have plagued Kenya. Firstly, the United Nations warned Kenya on 12 December 2016 at 11:21 a.m. about the droughts that have plagued Kenya. Kenya did not take much consideration to prepare for this drought. According to one of the 17 substantial goals of the United Nations is to end hunger, which is goal 2. This is one of the United Nations targets in order for all countries to end hunger by 2030. With an economy like ours, with how we are preparing and managing things in our country, would we be able to be at par with the United Nations goals? To my second point, the National Disaster Management Authority warned Kenya that there would be a drought similar or worse than the one in 2011. Did we actually take time to prepare? No, we didn't. What the government did was allocate $105, which is equivalent to 10.5 billion Kenya shillings, to respond to the drought, not to prepare for the drought. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Kidero grass. Will we all be preparing or sprucing up when we're expecting visitors like the Pope Francis, and the former US President Barack Obama when he came? Should we be sprucing up when guests are arriving? Or should we have our standards high no matter any time, whether they're guests or during normal times? Thirdly, Kenya is a drought-prone country. 80% of it is semi-arid and arid, and that's what covers its territory. Half of it is dissected by the equator, which is mainly on the southern part. This is climate. We've all studied climate. It's weather, and it's been studied for 30 to 35 years. It's not shocking that we know that Kenya is arid. It's not that someone came and said, today Kenya is arid and 80% of it is covered with that. But it's been there for long. The government has had many years, but has not taken time to prepare for this. This shows that after all that, after many years, we still have the same problem. We're not improving, and we need to change that. Thank you.
Ladies, you have 3 minutes for your opening statements.
My name is Maina Lashamtongwe from Alliance Girls High School, strongly opposing the motion that poor disaster management and preparedness policies are to be blamed for the cause of the recent droughts in Kenya. So first, I would like to really appreciate the first proposer and say that I understand that we were warned by the United Nations, yes. And one thing we need to understand is that as a country, silos are there so that maize can be stored, so that it can be used during times of drought. A report came that the silos that were in Kenya did not have enough maize for the country. That is true. And that is why the government took a decision promptly to import the maize from South Africa, which has been taken there so that the investors can bring it back to Kenya if at all such a thing happens. I'd like to define one term, which is actually disaster. And disaster are consequences of unidentified and inappropriately managed risks and are identified as products of hazards and vulnerabilities. Drought, on the other hand, is water shortage caused by deficiency of rainfall and differs from other natural hazards. One thing we have to understand is that there's some things that you do not have control of. For example, a research by the United States Geological Study shows that drought can be caused by climate change, and that is really what is affecting the world currently. There's been climate change, which is the variation of the climate in the world currently. And one that it says is burning of fossil fuels. That changes the carbon dioxide concentration in the country, in the atmosphere as it is, and that makes the country become warmer. When temperature rises, what do we expect? The soil moisture is, it is logical sense to say that it's not only the policies that blame for that. Kenya has put out policies which are there to manage drought, but then we have some circumstances that we cannot escape. We have some circumstances that we cannot control. It is out of our control. And that is why, from the study of the United States Geological Survey, they say that climate change is a cause of drought in sub-Saharan Africa. One, the burning of the fossil fuels, and two, the change of the ocean circulation. And as I said before, it leads to the carbon dioxide concentration. Another thing is the human activities in Kenya. You get that even due to deforestation, there is the change of climate because these are our water catchment areas. This is what attracts rainfall to the country. And due to these human activities, one that are needed for industries, another thing that are needed for domestic use, because you cannot tell me that I will change my ways of the way I live because I cannot get timber. And in one way or another, these human activities will affect the way the country is as per now. So I strongly oppose that the policies are the ones that are to be blamed for the drought in Kenya. Thank you.
Nova Pioneer, it's time for rebuttals. You have 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen of general audience, Kenya is desperately striving to achieve Vision 2030. But I know we lost our vision because we're not fighting. Standing before you boldly and cognizant is Alex Osodo of Nova Academies, here to propose the motion that poor disaster management and preparedness policies are to blame for the recent droughts that have plagued Kenya. I am not a man to disrespect a lady, but I am a man to stand for what I believe in. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk Mexican. El Nino, La Nina. The El Nino rains that struck 2015-2016 were followed by a devastating period of drought known as the La Nina, which struck many tropical countries all around the world. The Kenya Meteorological Department predicted this predicament to affect Kenya for 6 months, beginning from the end of 2016, ranging into 2017. But let me tell you something interesting. This is a perfect example of lack of preparedness. Because look at us now. We're entering our first year of this drought, where it was predicted for 6 months. This means that the Kenya Meteorological Department, in collaboration with the Kenyan government, which set up policies in terms of preparedness, did not set up contingency measures where the drought was to be extended, or they did not predict situations where the drought was to be extended. This is clear evidence that we lacked preparation and we lacked the necessary resources in order to predict such a situation from occurring, and look where we are now. My fellow opposer from Alliance Girls mentioned the fact that there were not enough silos in Kenya to store maize, and such Kenya resorted to importing food from other countries, such as Mexico. But let me tell you something, that is also a show of lack of preparedness. Because Kenya would have estimated the approximate number of silos, or would have approximated the necessary amount of resources to be allocated in different sectors, so as to suffice the period of lack of resources that would be caused by the drought. Secondly, when you talk about carbon dioxide emissions, this also aligns to poor management and preparedness policies, because we have policies against the insufficient managing of industries, which cause the emissions of carbon dioxide and sulfur into the environment and into the atmosphere, which cause the degradation of the ozone layer, which in turn causes solar radiation and terrestrial radiation to affect the earth, as we know. Kenya being largely affected, as my colleague said, 80% of Kenya being arid. This means that if Kenya has policies against this, but is not able to manage its own industries, isn't this a show of lack of preparedness and mismanagement? You tell me. I strongly propose my motion. Thank you.
Alliance Girls, you have 3 minutes for your rebuttal.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Shoboy Queen Hannah from Alliance Girls High School. First, I would want to tell my fellow posers that my fellow proposer did not talk about the number of silos, but it was the amount of the grains which were in the silos, but not the number of silos. Okay, my first point. Actually, the government has tried all it can to ensure that the country does not go to drought. This is true. They have encouraged the policy of cut one tree and you plant 2 or more. But the citizens are not employing they are not implementing what the government has done. So, this is because many citizens, we all know that people will look for places for settlement, places for agriculture. That's the reason as to why most of the citizens of Kenya, they go and destroy the forests, looking for settlement places and also places to cultivate so that they can get enough products, enough produce, enough food for them. That's the reason as to why the citizens are destroying the forest. But when we look at the government's preparedness, the government knew that probably this would happen because, as we all know, the citizens, it's not that not everyone will obey. Some people will be stubborn in their way. So the government, knowing that this can happen, the government went further and allocated resources. It is, in fact, Kenya is it's the country which has allocated more resources to curb drought. It contributes high annual premiums among African countries. That's 900 million to the African risk capacity, which is an insurance cover. Thus, this shows us the country, it's more prepared. It knew that drought might affect us because of what the citizens are doing. And true, can't we see that some forests, like the Mau forest, some other forests are being cleared for settlements. So, for the government to ensure that this will not happen, this will not affect us as a country, if the drought comes, we'll be able to curb the drought. If the drought comes, we'll be able to manage everything well. It went further and and allocated their resources to this insurance company. By doing this, it ensured that if there's an occurrence of a drought in the country, if a drought strikes us as a country, the insurance company will chip in through the policy that we took. It will chip in and ensure that we are all covered. This is through the government. This is through the insurance company providing the required facilities. For example, food, water, which is lacking in our country due to the drought, and even drugs for diseases which might affect the country. Thank you.
Let's go to the questions now. The proposers have been asked that they stated that instead of preparing, the government tends to react more and respond, but do they not think that it's possible to prepare to respond? And the opposition have been asked if it's not that the government's poor land management policies that cause people to cut down trees. So we'll have them respond to those questions. Third proposer, you have 3 minutes.
To answer the first question that was posed about how much the US gave, that was a point of correction. I'd like to correct you that it was $105 million that the Kenyan government gave to cope with this drought, and that is equivalent to 10.5 billion Kenya shillings. The second question is that doesn't
Kenya prepare so they can respond? I'd like to say 2 quotes. A stitch in time saves 9, and prevention is better than cure. And I do know that all of you understand all these things. So Kenya has been proven to be more reactive than proactive by the United Nations. To bring my points, I would like to say that people would say that this drought is caused due to climatic conditions and such stuff. But what is the cause of these climatic conditions? If we go digging deeper and see what is the main thing that is causing this pollution and such stuff that is in turn affecting drought, then my fellow opposers say that people are cutting down trees, which is in turn affecting our climate. But I'd like to ask you a question. Wasn't there a rule that was imposed that if you say that there was a rule imposed that if you cut a tree, you should plant 2. That rule was imposed, but is there any action being taken about it? For me, according to what I got, I don't think so that there's anything that is being taken, any action that is being taken about this thing. People are just cutting trees, but no action is being done to them. There's no consequence imposed. If there was a consequence, these trees would still be here. You mentioned examples, the Mau forest. It was a dense forest by the time the Mau Mau were doing their actions to chase away the Europeans. So I'd like to tell you that if this rule was imposed and people were told to follow it and there will be a consequence, I think that we would be able to cope with this thing of drought. So what I'm just trying to say in summary form is that it is because of poor management that they are unable to tell the people that they should do this and do that they should not cut trees, and if they cut trees, they have to plant 2. Kenya lacks the political will to initiate reforms. Most of Kenya's funds of drought coverage come from foreign aid. So the money that they contribute to the ARC, most of it doesn't come from the Kenya's government, because if we go to read the budget that was initiated last year, we don't see anywhere that the money allocated, we're told that it should be used for this criteria about drought and coping with such situations. So because of poor management, Kenya is facing this drought that has been striking them recently. Thank you.
Alliance Girls, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Greetings. My name is Nyanchera Faith from the Alliance Girls High School. To my question from Miriam, you say that trees are being cut down. Don't you think that this is affecting the water catchment areas? Let me remind you of the post-election violence. Out of this violence, there were internally displaced persons. The government of Kenya is trying to clear some of the forests so that these people can be resettled. Let me ask you a question. Don't you think it's human for you to be taken to an arid place to settle there? You need a place where you can actually start something arable like agriculture. My first proposal. I support your argument about the National Disaster Management Authority. Thank you. When was this policy formulated? It was formulated in 2011 after the drought through the State Corporation Act. I like your argument. But don't you think that this policy has warned Kenya enough? Out of this, Kenya has developed a policy through an irrigation scheme so that it can actually curb drought. Let me give you the example of the irrigation scheme. Do you know of the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme? This scheme has been developed so that it can counter, it's in Cliffy County through the Sagana River, so that it can counter the drought and actually produce maize. The other day, I was in the internet reading through my research, and I discovered that the Galana scheme has actually helped curb some of the areas in the coast drought. It has produced 103,000 bags of maize. In Kenya, through this drought, we have 23 countries having drought. The government was forced to go and get maize from Mexico that was kept in South Africa when the maize from the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme was exhausted. Don't you think that the Galana irrigation Kulalu scheme was a good policy that was developed by the government and has actually helped counter the drought that is in the coast. Thank you.
We'll hear final submissions. Pioneer, you have 1 minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Usodu standing before you again with my closing statement. It is a fact that trees are being cut down, yes, to establish settlements, but what is causing the cutting down of these trees? The poor management of available land, such that the government has to go to destroy its natural resources so as to set up, to establish settlements for these people. Additionally, let's look at other countries within tropical zones. Let's look at Mexico. Mexico was also plagued with the same situation of drought. Countries around us have also been plagued: South Sudan, Egypt, and Somalia, to mention a few, but let's look at some in the case scenario. Why should it be Kenya that is ailing while other countries have managed to manage their own situations and come out of it strong and healthy? Ladies and gentlemen, I pose that question to you. Let's think about it. Kenya is a country within the tropical zones, but then is being affected by aridity in the region and desertification in the region. However, countries such as Ethiopia, which are facing the same situation, are prospering due to proper management that's coming from the country and setting up of proper policies that are able to suffice the needs of drought within the nation. Thank you.
Alliance Girls, you have 1 minute as well.
Just a reminder is that the Kenyan government has tried to remove all people settling in the Mau forest so that they cannot continue destroying the forest, because that is one of the main water catchment areas, and that's an attraction for rainfall. Another thing is that one of the countries you said, for example, Sudan, has come to Kenya to ask for aid. Last year, they came to Kenya to ask for aid when they were struck with drought, and they did not have anything to do. Don't you think that these poor policies are the ones that they're not really affecting us? Don't you think that it's because of the natural hazards that we have? Don't you think it's because of the inevitable things that we cannot control ourselves? Actually, can we control the change of the ocean circulation? We cannot. And thus, the policies are not the ones to blame for the drought. The government has tried its level best, from establishment of the silos to importation of maize, even from South Africa. And I think that these poor disaster management and preparedness policies are not really to blame for the recent droughts that have plagued Kenya. Maina Leshamtongwe from Alliance Girls High School, and I rest my case.
Alliance Girls, Leshamta, I think you stood out for me. You exude a lot of confidence. Your introduction was very good. You defined your terms. You broke down the debate for the audience, which was nice. Queen, good. Faith, I think you should be more passionate next time. Plus, you have 3 minutes. Utilize them well. All the same, I wish all the teams luck.
To Nova, my question is, how bad is it? How bad is it? Any comparisons that you could give us? Are there countries that are doing better than us, all right? Because we know that there are countries living in worse environments than us, but they're doing okay. So Niger, however, and this goes to both Niger and Leshamta, good definition of terms for the motion. Niger, good submissions and factual mastery of topic as well was quite good. I think all you could do is now work on your delivery. You want to be more persuasive when you're speaking to the audience, and it's a style. You learn it over time.
So overall, Nova, I think that you used good use of data, which indicates very good research practice. And for some of you, I saw your personality coming through. Nigel, I thought you gave a very good, strong introduction. And Alex, you were a bit funny, so it's good to have some humor, you know, when you started. And for Alliance, you came out very, very strongly, Lashanta. Very excellent. I think you managed to captivate the audience. You're able to fluctuate your tone and your voice to keep them engaged. And I think you set the pace quite well for your team.
Over to the results. Nova Academy versus Alliance Girls. The judges awarded Alliance Girls 68%. Please give them a round of applause. Nova Academy, the judges saw it fit to award you 70%. You're our winners for the debate.
Congratulations to Nova Academy and a good job to both teams on stage for a truly wonderful debate. Thank you for being with us in studio and those of you at home for watching and staying engaged with us. Remember to give us your feedback. At Great Debaters EA is our Twitter handle. I have been your host, Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Yumbok. Catch you next time.
The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.